Imperial Uncle. Chapter 6. Lu Tongyi is wearing his court robes, so he needs to go home and change. Both Kitten and I came to court in casual clothes. At the gates to the imperial city, I say to Kitten, if you're anxious that someone may seize the item in the meantime, you can go ahead of us and reserve a spot, while I accompany Chancellor Lu home to change. You must wait for us to arrive before making your purchase. Gratitude written plain across his face, Kitten says, great. Then I will be on my way. Imperial Uncle, you must remember to bring along banknotes. And leaping onto the back of a horse, he gallops off like a gust of wind. I give Lu Tongyi a little smile. This imperial nephew of mine is just too impatient. He tends to be careless at whatever he does. His Highness is as swift and decisive as a storm. Certainly by the time he reaches your Highness's age, he'll be as discreet in thoughts and deeds as you are. Is this meant to praise me, or insult me? Rancy must have some misconceptions about me still, but since these words came out of his mouth, I love to hear them even if they were insulting. That he would insult me to my face is evidence of his proper and unyielding moral character. I give Lu Tongyi another smile. Chancellor Lu, you're too kind. While it's true that I have already reached such an age, I still find myself somewhat careless and lacking in the handling of affairs. That's why my imperial nephews largely think of me as a peer of their own generation. I can never comport myself like an imperial uncle in front of them. From where we are at the inner city gate, we're still some distance to Lu Tongyi's palanquin, yet I intentionally allow my steps to slow, taking my time to walk and chat. Thankfully Lu Tongyi isn't overly cautious when speaking to me. He counters my assertion with, the age gap between your Highness and the other princes was never so wide to begin with. They probably think of you quite differently from Prince Xiao and the other of your peers. Of my older cousins such as Prince Xiao and Prince Yang, the most senior is already in his 50s. If my dad were still alive today, he'd be around the same age. Thinking about it, it really doesn't seem like I'm in the same generation as them. And so I tell him, Chancellor Lu, these words of yours had the immediate effect of making me feel renewed, like I'm a young man again. Lu Tongyi smiles. Your Highness is too kind. I take my carriage, and arrive at the Grand Chancellor's official residence, one alongside Lu Tongyi's palanquin. Before he climbs into his palanquin, he asks me, Your Highness won't be going home to retrieve your banknotes? I don't believe for a moment that the wine cup Kitten speaks of really was used by the King Wen of Zhou. It's most likely a fake. Let's have a look first. There'll be plenty of time for banknotes after the item has been identified as the real deal. Lu Tongyi nods, that's true. And presumably the antique dealer would have no fear that two princes could take his wine cup and not pay for it. Naturally. To say nothing that we also have Chancellor Lu as a guarantor. Lu Tongyi's brows arch a smidgen. Oh, so that's the reason why your Highness insisted on dragging this servant along. I sigh. Ayo, that's not good. Chancellor Lu has found me out. Lu Tongyi smiles in his quiet way and disappears into his palanquin. I return his smile and climb into my carriage. The occasion of my carriage entering the Grand Chancellor's residence is causing an appropriate stir among the household. Stepping off of the carriage, I count 1 steward and 4 page boys changing color at the sight of me. But Chancellor Lu excels in the management of his household, so apart from those few, the rest who steal glances at me only dare do so hiding in corners. As I sit in the main hall, I can discern some slight curiosity in the eyes of the maids and page boys bringing me tea, but their expressions remain respectful and ordinary. Lu Tongyi hasn't yet married, but his residence is most tastefully decorated, not at all inferior compared to mine, the one who has a wife. Speaking of a wife, I am once more reminded of the princess and my head starts throbbing again. Luckily that's when Lu Tongyi appears, having finished changing into casual dress. He's donned a jade-colored silk outer garment too, and replaced his official's black silk hat with a hair tie to match his shirt, losing a bit of implacability, gaining a few degrees of natural grace. I find myself once again able to forget about the princess for the moment. He stands in the hall. Your Highness, are we leaving now? I stir myself up, by all means. Let's go. That wine cup selling merchant Kitten spoke of works out of a large floating pavilion on a river in the capital's outskirts. By the time Lu Tongyi and I make our way there, the evening has darkened, the lanterns on the pavilion have already been lit. I find Kitten seated in the lavishly outfitted guest reception hall, wine cup in hand, looking at some girls dancing in costumes reminiscent of the Silk Road. There are a few more people here besides him, some of whom I believe I recognize, all of whom are likely to be the children of the capital's aristocratic families. Kitten rises and runs to me, acting as though he's a high official out in plain clothes on an envoy mission, and pulls my sleeve as he whispers, "You're finally here. Oh, Chancellor Lu, you're here as well. Imperial Uncle, none of these people here know who we are. Don't blow our cover." I make a noise of agreement, thinking to myself, with you strutting around the capital all day long, how many people wouldn't recognize this mug of yours? Aren't they just pretending not to know you? Kitten leads Lu Tongyi and me to our seats. And although those already seated seem indeed unmoved, their gazes drift incessantly in our direction. Prince Hui, Chancellor Lu, and Prince Dai on an excursion to a floating pavilion together. By tomorrow, the entire imperial court will surely learn of this marvel. I ask Kitten, where is this wine cup you wanted to buy? It can't be the one you're holding, can it? Kitten laughs. How can it possibly be the one I'm holding? I was just waiting for you, Uncle, and young Sir Tong, and that's why I haven't given Merchant Su leave to bring it out. Then he turns to someone sitting to one side, Merchant Su, those I was waiting for have arrived. You can bring the item out now. That Merchant Su looks to be in his 40s, with a face the color of red sandalwood. Slightly plump and clad in clothes that are neither too new nor too worn, he looks rather guileless actually. Facing our party, he answers in the affirmative, and bowing, he turns, disappearing behind a side door, presently coming out with a wooden box. He places the wooden box on top of the table before us, and taking great care slowly opens the lid. It turns out that there's another box inside, and once he opens that one, there's another box in that. It's not until he opens the fifth box that crimson silk is revealed. That knick-knack really is wrapped up with quite a bit of ceremony. Merchant Su lifts the bundle wrapped in red silk, and as though he's towing a delicate raw egg yolk, presents it to Kitten. Kitten rubs his hands, takes it from him, and opens it layer by layer. A tarnished copper wine cup lies on the red silk, recounting the passage of eons and the change it witnessed. Seeing how corroded it is, it may not be so strange if it really was used by the King Wen of Zhou. As though for fear of sullying it with his fingerprints, Kitten examines it, turning it over and over in his hands with the cloth. Then I take it from him to have a look. Kitten guides me from my side, "Uncle, look at the shape of this wine cup. Then look at this pattern. There's no doubt that it's a relic from the Shangzhou era. Now take a look at this corrosion. Such a thick green coating of patina can't possibly have accumulated in less than 1,000 years. His bright, burning gaze seems about to go right through my hand and my outer robe, scouting out the exact location of my banknotes so as to draw them out. Without saying a word, I pass the wine cup to Lu Tongyi. Lu Tongyi holds the cup in his hands, gives it a look. Merchant Su, from what I can see, this wine cup seems not to be from the Shang or Zhou dynasties. I had already foreseen this, so I smile. Merchant Su looks stunned all over. "Young sir, please do not speak without thinking. This lowly one have always done honest business. How could this lowly one ever dare produce a fake to dupe you, my honored guests?" Kitten looks even more stunned all over. "Lu young Sir Tong, take a more careful look. It's clear at a single glance that this relic is quite old and full of history. If it's not from the Shangzhou period, then what period did it come from?" Lu Tongyi sets the wine cup back onto the table, and mildly conveys, as far as I can tell, it was made last year. Night has fallen now, dark and deep, with starlight above me. I return to my estate. Kitten felt exceedingly dejected. Lu Tongyi has determined that the wine cup was indeed a fake, and a real shoddy fake at that. He said, making a fake like this is extremely easy to do. First make a mold according to the relic one wishes to make a copy of, melt a pot of copper and you can cast as many as you like. Then toss it in some grease, and alternate burying it in silt and drying it in the sun a few days at a time over and over. In the end, after 8 months of having been buried in the earth and soaked in water, it will end up covered in spots of patina, giving it the look of being primitive and having seen many years. It is well known to all that outside of the 3 great cancers, the imperial court also lays claim to 2 sharp advantages, the first being Chancellor Liu's sharp eye, the second being Chief Yun's sharp tongue. Kitten felt particularly torn up over Chancellor Liu's eyes making such a judgment. Thereupon someone else present at our table called for the authorities, and they dragged Merchant Su to the yamen and confiscated his merchandise. Lu Tongyi went to look in on the proceedings with great interest. Of the several large trunks of merchandise belonging to Merchant Su, aside from the wooden boxes which were genuine, nearly all were forgeries. The yamen's bailiffs threw the fakes all over the boat. Gold, silver, copper, iron, jade, and lapis lazuli, gleaming beneath candlelight and so very pretty. It's too bad that the look on my nephew Kitten's face wasn't pretty at all. I said to him, "You're a young man, you must experience some setbacks. We can only gain experience by getting burned." Acting like none of this had anything to do with him, Lu Tongyi stood to one side, picked up a little something and started fiddling with it. I strolled over to look, and found him playing with a round and smooth jade stone, white jade, suffused with a cloud-like scarlet pattern, crystalline, lovely. I suspect this was raw material Merchant Su kept for making his fake relics. It had some red to begin with, and with a little dye he could have turned it into a bloodstone, carved it into a seal belonging to some luminary of a previous dynasty. Lu Tongyi looked at it, then he swiftly returned it. The bailiffs would likely have to take everything back to the yamen later, to present it all as evidence. Kitten had been deeply wounded by the wine cup. Once we came out of the floating pavilion, he said he still had some things to do and left. He'd probably gone off drinking somewhere. In order to avoid looking too conspicuous, Lu Tongyi and I shared a carriage from his residence on the way over. That carriage is delivering me back to my estate first. I stepped down from the carriage in front of the gates and thanked Lu Tongyi. "Thank you, Chancellor Lu, you have gone to a lot of trouble on our behalf this evening." Lu Tongyi also steps off the carriage, and standing by it, he smiles at me. "You're most welcome, Your Highness." In the night breeze, the slight shifting of his jade-colored garment resembles the ripples on a lake. I produce something from my sleeve and hold it up before him. "I hope you'll kindly accept this little offering." Lu Tongyi stares at the object with a mild look of astonishment. I laugh. "This is what's called presenting the Buddha with stolen flowers. I can only hope that you will turn a blind eye and not notify the Court of Judicial Review's yamen and have me arrested. Such a small little stone, I have a feeling that it'd make no difference whether it's missing from that pile of counterfeited items or not." There's a barely perceptible curve at the end of Lu Tongyi's eyes. "Your Highness, you're not just asking me to turn a blind eye. You're asking me to accept stolen goods." Sounding forlorn, I ask him, "You won't take it then, Chancellor Lu?" The curve at the end of Lu Tongyi's eyes deepens. He takes the stone from my hand, and lifts his sleeve in a gesture of thanks. "Thank you, Your Highness. This servant will be on my way." I watch as he climbs into his carriage, and as it drives off into the night. This one single evening is nearly tantamount to the past 10 years I've lived. So Lu Tongyi's normally austere and pedantic image seems not to be entirely genuine. I did not judge him wrong, after all. If he seriously was a pedant, however could he have become Grand Chancellor at such a young age? I enter my estate stepping on the warm night air, and as soon as I walk through the threshold I can feel right away that something isn't right. By a small side door, someone is stamping his feet. Ayo, Prince Hui, you're finally home. This person's presence startles me for a second. You can't be serious. It's the middle of the night. How's that possible? I tear towards the main reception hall, and the display of ceremony I walk by tells me that it is indeed quite possible. I take a moment to straighten my clothes before striding into the main hall. As I'm about to bend my knee, a familiar voice from the seat of honor stops me. Imperial Uncle, you've finally come home. Don't worry about the formalities, there's no need to be so proper when you're meeting us at home. I bow. Greetings, Your Majesty. This servant had no idea that you were coming. Please forgive this servant for the discourtesy of not being there to kneel and greet you. In the centermost seat of the main hall's row of seats reserved for the most honored of guests, my emperor nephew says impatiently, Imperial Uncle, do straighten out your tongue and talk to us properly. I have no choice but to rise, and with a smile on my face I ask him, Your Majesty, it's the middle of the night. What are you doing here? That seems to have satisfied His Majesty. Leaning back in his chair, he takes the tea as a young eunuch offers it to him. This evening we have heard that the rift in your family has become quite the cataclysm. Princess Consort Hui attempted to hang herself, and the other suspect threw himself headfirst at the wall and tried to bite his own tongue off. Imperial Mother isn't feeling well and doesn't have the energy to involve herself, and we were told that no one has seen you since you came to the palace. With problems of such magnitude we felt obliged to personally come to your estate and take care of some of these household duties in your stead. We wonder if you'll begrudge me for meddling in your business. So it seems the internal affairs of my household have been driven to the state in the short time between my going to the palace and coming back here. Before another moment can pass, I say, this servant is most ashamed that my household affairs have alarmed your Majesty. That your Majesty shows such favor for myself moves the servant to tears. Eyes downcast, Kijhi pushes the floating tea leaves on his tea aside with the cup's lid. You're having to be both most ashamed and moved to tears. You work so hard, Imperial Uncle, you must take better care of yourself. We heard that you spent this evening listening to music on a floating pavilion with Chancellor Lu. Are you perchance still yearning for more? End chapter. Imperial Uncle. Chapter 7. When I was standing with Lu Tongyi before the gates, we must have attracted quite a lot of attention from those within. Oh, we did. Prince Dai wanted to buy antiques this afternoon, and being no more knowledgeable than he, this servant invited Chancellor Lu along to appraise the item for him. Right. Kitten even came over earlier to complain to us, saying you insisted on bothering Chancellor Lu, so now he's owing Lu Tongyi a favor as well as having suffered a bout of humiliation in his presence. It's a crowded hall, near half full. I was in such a hurry coming in earlier there was barely time to make a single sweep of the room. I didn't have a chance to see who is actually here. Prince Dai did indeed leave earlier than this servant. He said he wanted to go drinking, and so this servant had little choice but contend with taking Chancellor Liu's carriage on the way back. This servant never thought he'd come to his home before the servant was able, and to go so far as to lodge an official complaint with your Majesty. If he's ever out of spending money and comes to solicit some from his cousin uncle here, this servant is not about to lend him anything again. I look left and right. Where did that kid go? This servant must see him and settle the score. Looking around searchingly, I find a throng of imperial guards and eunuchs, but no sign of Kitten. Kijhi lifts his gaze slightly, revealing a tiny smile. Kitten likely found out that we were here, and it was only out of fear that we have grown impatient waiting for you that he rushed over to let me know where you were. Then at some point his story turned into complaining in spite of himself. After he finished, he probably regretted it. For fear that you would give him a talking to when you get back, so he left. Actually, it was when you were speaking with Chancellor Lu at the gates that Kitten left by the back door. Please don't blame him, Imperial Uncle. I smile back at him. With your majesty to intercede on his behalf, no matter how much the servant wanted to settle the score with him earlier, now this servant no longer do. Imperial Uncle, as we speak at this moment, we are not sure whether we should be praising you for your forbearance and your ability to keep your composure. Being ignorant of the facts, Kitten was on his way elsewhere when he heard that we have come to your estate and knew right away that something serious may have transpired, and rushed over here in a panic to deliver a message in your stead. Meanwhile, Imperial Uncle, you finished attending to your nephew, and then you took Chancellor Liu's carriage back home like you had all the time in the world. You even remembered to have a chat with him after exiting the carriage. Not only did we have a chat, I even gave him something. In the mind of this messenger, just what sort of precious item the little rock I gave Lu Tongyi has been turned into, I wonder. Having been able to minutely shorten the distance between Lu Tongyi and I this evening, I may have secretly rejoiced a bit too much. That this should take place while Kijhi happens to be in my home though is quite the coincidence. Though my intentions are impure, my actions are above board, so there's no need to avoid the subject. Like an open book, I look right at Kijhi and tell him, since the person this servant inconvenienced was Chancellor Liu, due respect must be observed. There is little fellowship between us, and so this servant would like to speak to him more often, get to know him better. Kijhi once again lifts his gaze to meet mine, and sets his tea back down onto a tray proffered by a eunuch. Without pausing, I continue, this servant had no idea that your majesty was here, otherwise I would have returned faster than cavalry in charge of passing on military intelligence. Kijhi waves the rest of my words away. Enough. If you keep talking we'll end up a million miles from the key topic. Imperial Uncle, the imperial physician has already been by to see Princess Consort Huai. It's nothing serious. She woke up a while ago. We asked her a few questions, she said some things. From Kijhi's expression I can discern that Princess Huai's conduct must not be inferior to her performance this morning. Imperial Uncle, what are you going to do? This is our first time handling this sort of household affair. In the end, we will leave the final decision to you. Hesitantly, I tell him, since your majesty has already been alerted, by rights it should be handled by the ministry of the imperial clan, however. This servant would still like to. Kijhi arches a brow. You would still like to settle it privately. I sigh. This affair has been wearing down what prestige I have, since it began. If the case is submitted to the ministry of the imperial clan, I'm afraid the disgrace on my name would be complete. The eunuchs have placed an embroidered dragon cushion of yellow satin behind Kijhi, and he leans back on it now. How do you intend to punish Princess Consort Huai and Hezhong? Princess Consort Huai is indeed pregnant. However, aside from her words, we have no other evidence that this has anything to do with the bookkeeper Hezhong. This servant believed that more investigation is in order. Also, this servant believed that though the mother is at fault, the child is innocent. Kijhi hums in approval. Sounds reasonable. As of now it is impossible to determine whose child Princess Consort Huai is carrying. Why don't we settle her in a secluded location and wait for the child to be born, and put off this discussion until we can examine the child, see whether they're your flesh and blood. My forehead feels fit to burst, and it seems to be making my entire vertebrae feel heavy too. I must tell him. That isn't something that needs examining. This servant can confirm, the child that Princess Consort Huai is carrying really isn't mine. I don't know whether it's a false impression on my part. It was quiet in the hall to begin with, after those words left me it seems to get even quieter. Kijhi's expression is on the side of inscrutable, and there's a beat before he speaks again. Imperial Uncle, we can empathize with your desire to plead for leniency on Princess Consort Huai's behalf owing to your many years of marital relationship. However, what we don't understand is, Hezhong is merely a scholar who was offered shelter in your home. If it's not true, why would she say it was him? and if you're already certain, why do you persist in re-investigating and not take her at her word? He looks me up and down. Why don't we lock He Zhong into the prison at the ministry of the Imperial clan for the time being? Again I heave a sigh. It's because I found many points in Princess Consort Huai's testimony doubtful. I do not wish for this kind of thing to be concluded rashly. If it turns out that the man she kept is another and no punishment comes to him, I could never tolerate it. The corner of He's mouth twitches. You could never tolerate it? Imperial Uncle, you have again made a reasonable case. His sharp gaze seems ready to penetrate my face, then he suddenly rises to stand. Imperial Uncle, come with us to the meditation room in the back. No one else need follow. We would like to speak with Prince Huai alone. What he calls the meditation room in the back is actually a small room separating the main hall and a secondary guest hall. It was set aside for taking breaks in the midst of entertaining guests, a place to retreat to if one happens to grow tired. I'm also inclined to stop here sometimes. Striding past the threshold, he takes a quick look around. The decoration in this room has never really changed much. I stand behind him, smiling apologetically. That's because the servant is a lazy person. He turns his head and shoots me a sidelong glance. In here there's only you and I, you don't need to keep going your servant this your servant that. Let's close the door. I immediately comply with his order and close the door. He regards me with his hands clasped behind his back. We saw He Zhong this afternoon as well, so elegant and frail. It's not surprising that you're protective of him. I feel a chill running along my spine. I tell him immediately, Your Majesty, He Zhong seriously isn't. That will do. There's no need to hide it. How could we not know of your proclivities? Earnestly, I attempt to exculpate myself. Even though this servant have some predilection, but this servant have always been prudent, and watch myself strictly. Under no circumstances would I bring anyone like that back home. With He Zhong, it really was because the servant thought he was in pitiful dire straits yet possessing of talent and aspirations, wishing to do a good deed. This servant took him in so that he could have some way of earning a livelihood in my estate. I'm not trying to protect him, I just have some suspicions. Maybe Princess Consort Huai misunderstood something, so she. He's brows furrow somewhat. This is the Prince Huai estate. If Princess Consort Huai really does find him an eyesore, she could have punished him any way she wanted. Why would she go so far as to get herself pregnant so as to frame him? My guess is that she doesn't merely wish to punish him, she wishes to punish me even more. Helplessly, I sigh again. Your Majesty, sometimes what goes on in a woman's head and her actions cannot be deduced with common sense. He's eyes narrow. A quick laugh escapes him. No matter which way you turn it, your actions are perfectly justified. Lai is right, the moment you start speaking, all the reasoning is on your side. I hang my head. You flatter me. This servant have always spoken in accordance with the truth. He takes 2 paces, but then he retraces his steps and stops before me. Spoken in accordance with the truth? Chinjun, I have never been able to tell whether anything you say is true or not. For instance, you say you prefer men, but when Imperial Mother made the match and asked you to marry Princess Huai, and me to officiate your wedding, you married her. We are well aware of your libertine ways, one here, one there, even if we're only counting the names that have reached my ears, it's a long list. Scholar Zhang, Young Li, and the like, it seems even Yun Yu is one among them. As I listen to that name at the end there, I look up with a start. He isn't. He cuts me off, but Imperial Uncle, it doesn't seem as though anyone has ever taken up residence in your heart. Even someone like Yun Yu can't tie you down. So you've set your eyes on Lu Tongyi now. There's already an obvious chill behind me, I simply allow my voice to go placid and calm then, pacing my words. Your Majesty, though this servant have these pursuits, this servant have only ever indulged them in the pleasure district. And it is all the more unlikely for this servant to improperly desire anyone this servant come across, making my associations with them anything less than chaste. Both Chief Yun and Chancellor Lu are your Majesty's distinguished ministers, pillars of the government. How can this servant ever allow myself and such rumors sully them? On the other hand, my predilections are known, and sewage does not fear filth. But if I were to prove detrimental to your distinguished minister's reputation, then even if I'm torn limb from limb it would not be enough punishment for my sins. A moment of silence goes by. When Kijhi speaks again, his tone has softened. We were only bringing up these rumors in jest, you needn't disparage yourself so harshly. Prince Huai, you're the pillar of my reign, the one whose service we rely on most of all. If you censure yourself until your value is less than a single copper, what are we to do? This servant have always passed my days in a muddle, and have made no contributions at all to either your majesty or the state you speak too highly of me. Another moment of silence later, Kijhi asks, Chinjun, we have always wanted to ask you one question. What exactly do you keep in your heart? I say to him, word by word, this servant's devotion to your majesty and the state. Kijhi gives me a look, then another. The corner of his mouth gives a little twitch. That's why we said we never knew which of your words we should believe. First you said you passed your days in a muddle, made no contributions to the state nor to us, and now you're trying to make it sound like your heart only contains devotion to us and the state. I immediately smile back. Though muddled and idle, devotion this servant have plenty. Devotion does not necessitate deeds. Kijhi swings a dismissive sleeve. Fine, that makes a lot of sense. Well then, this is as far as we will be involved in the case of Princess Huai, Imperial Uncle. We will leave it to you to consider how best to handle her and He Zhong as well. These are your household affairs, you may do as you see fit. I open the door, and wait for Kijhi to step through before following him soon after. I feel rather exhausted. Fatigued. The folk adage says age 3 is a good predictor of a man, age 7 tells you how he is wizened, but that isn't accurate at all. When I think back to Kijhi as a child, how obedient, how quiet, there's no way anyone could have predicted that he would become so impressive. How someone will change in the future, before that change, no one can ever know. End chapter. Imperial Uncle. Chapter 8. At last, His Majesty's procession is heading back to the palace. I see him off respectfully at the gates, and as I go back inside, I find myself a bit unsteady on my feet. I pause outside the chambers where Princess Huai is kept, hesitating. I want to go inside, but I'm afraid that if she sees me she'll only become more out of control, so I stroll off to detour around to the little room in the rear courtyard where He Zhong is kept. But the moment I make it to the edge of the gallery, it occurs to me that quite a few of the maids in my estate came into my service through my marriage to Princess Huai, and they're rather loyal to her. It's hard to say which of them may go tell her tomorrow, His Highness didn't come to see you last night, but he went to He Zhong's room. It might make things get even more out of hand. So, I turn and start making my way back, when suddenly the thought strikes me, well then I may as well not see either one of them. But in all likelihood, He Zhong has been wrongfully accused by Princess Huai. I've heard that he's been working himself to the bone since he joined us, and hasn't really been earning all that much. Now he's resorting to such drastic measures as throwing himself at the walls and biting his tongue. It would be rather uncharitable of me to not see him at all. If I'm going to see He Zhong, then I must first go see Princess Huai. I arrive before Princess Huai's door, and there yet another thought comes to me. It seems that if a maid tells her tomorrow that last night after His Highness came to see you, he immediately went to see He Zhong, would also be quite risky. I stand before Princess Huai's door, at loose ends. Beside me, Chief Steward So speaks up, Your Highness had been thinking about Princess Consort Huai all this time, this lowly one can tell. That things between you and her have come to this, it really makes this lowly one feel, he trails off, and wipes his eyes with a sleeve. It really is. They say having the good fortune to be husband and wife is a fate cultivated in a previous cycle of reincarnation. But unfortunately it looks like neither of us managed enough good deeds in our past lives. I gesture at the door and say to Chief Steward, so, go on then, open the door. I step inside. Princess Hawaii is lying on the bed, facing in. In front of the bed, 4 maids are keeping watch lest she tries to kill herself again in a fit of desperation. The maids greet me and tactfully withdraw, then Chief Steward so kindly closes the door for me. I stare at Princess Hawaii, and want to do nothing but sigh. I have no idea what I should say, but it not be fitting for me to not say anything either. It takes me ages to weigh my words. Princess Consort Hawaii, you've vented enough today, no. Princess Hawaii sneers, and sits up on the bed. Your Highness, you're not going to ask me exactly who fathered the child. I say nothing. She gives me another scornful laugh. Your Highness is oft prone to putting on airs, but now I find that when you're confronting a crisis you turn into a soft-boned tortoise. I'd die before telling you who the child's father is. That's as good as telling this prince that you framed Hezhong. Princess Hawaii's expression changes, but then she raises her head high. You and I are the only ones here, it's not as though we're in the ministry of the Imperial clan's Great Hall of Judgment. So what if I tell you right now that even if I'm to die, I'll drag Hezhong into this? As long as this prince's heart knows the truth, that is enough. And you'd even said you haven't been unchanged asked with that Hezhong. Look at how you fret over him, Your Highness. If you insist on thinking that of me, there's nothing I can do to change your mind. But why must you do this to yourself? Princess Hawaii turns away without a word. I turn my back on her. His Majesty has already graciously granted this prince permission to decide your fate. For things to have come to this for you, I'm at fault too, I will find you a way through this. As I open the door, Princess Hawaii's voice rises from behind me. Your Highness, the truth is, I've hated you since before I married you, and I hate you still now. I've only done this because I refuse to accept my lot. Why must this be my lot? I pull the door open, and before leaving, I ask her, that's why you set off to make your lot even worse. With her in this condition, there's really nothing I can say to her, and so I step across the threshold again. Once I'm outside, despite my misgivings, I decide to go to the room where Hezhong is being kept. Hezhong is also lying on a bed. Some servants are keeping a close watch on him, and upon my arrival they withdraw after some greetings. Chief Steward so closes the door for me once more. I have no idea whether Hezhong is awake or unconscious as I stop in front of his bed. This prince, no, this has nothing to do with you. Princess Consort Hawaii framed you. You have suffered an injustice. I'm very sorry. Hezhong's head is wrapped in layers and layers of white gauze. There is a flicker of movement, and 2 lines of tears slowly spill from the corners of his eyes. Though as of yet this prince have no evidence, this prince will definitely give you an explanation by tomorrow. Chief Steward so asks me after I come out of the room, Your Highness, what do you think is the best way to investigate this case? Take those personal maids that came with Princess Hawaii from her parents' house and shut them away individually in meditation rooms. Tell them that if they tell us who Princess Consort Hawaii's lover is, this prince will only kill that man, and not kill the princess. If they don't tell us, then this prince will see Princess Consort Hawaii off on her journey to the underworld by tomorrow. Chief Steward so goes to carry out my instructions right away. Before he leaves, he does not forget to add, brilliant, Your Highness. Next day, the entire truth comes to light. Princess Hawaii's lover was a guard in my estate. He used to be a guard in Li Yu's estate. After I married, Li Yu recommended him to me. I suspected that he was a snitch the Empress tasked Li Yu to plant in my home, and so I accepted the recommendation, letting him stay here as a guard. he's long gone by the time we send people to apprehend him. After Princess Huai realized she was pregnant, she went to him, begging him to take her and run away. Instead, he gave her a package of herbs for abortion. In other words, she was upset by him, but she did not want to lay the blame on her lover, and so first she blamed her lot, that it was fate that made her and her lover different social classes so they couldn't possibly have a happy ending. Then she transferred her hatred to me, the one who forcibly married her, thus sealing her fate. These facts leave me somewhat sour. At first I thought Princess Huai may have changed her mind and fallen for me long ago. A man like me should be someone she could easily rest her affections with. But because she's a dignified young lady from a noble house, she had found it too embarrassing to tell me, and since I was loath to be cognizant of her feelings, her love eventually turned to hate. The teeth-gnashing hatred she showed me the day before, and the way she persisted in framing Hejon, meant she was jealous, to put it bluntly. Without the deepest love, where comes such excruciating hatred? One could never have imagined that the truth is thus. Besides amazement, I cannot help feeling dejected. But why must she drag Hejon into this? After hearing that the guard has run off, Princess Huai goes into hysterics again, but a different sort of hysterics from yesterday. She's both crying and laughing, pointing her finger at me and yelling. "It's all your fault. I was planning to break things off with him after marrying you. I thought about giving myself to you, but your sleeve is cut? If your sleeve is cut, why did you marry me anyway? I hate you. I wanted you to wish you were dead. I'll make life difficult for every last person you take a liking to. Hence, after all that roundabout, everything is still my fault in the end. But now I'm too tired to argue with Princess Huai, so I just go along with what she's saying. Fine. It's all my fault. You commit adultery with a guard, tarnish another's good name, conceive an illegitimate child, in addition, damage my estate's reputation and ruin my name even if my name doesn't need your help ruining. How do you suppose I should punish you?" Princess Huai bites her lip, and without any warning at all, bursts into bitter, heartbroken tears. I sigh. This prince will find you a Buddhist nunnery then. You can go eat some vegetarian food and recite some sutras, calm down some, lay down the burdens of your soul, and while you're there, wait for the child to be born, safe and sound. I tell her benevolently, no matter what, the child has done no wrong. In this split second, I think that even if I become a tortoise, I'm a tortoise with a halo around its head. Afternoon, Chief Yun comes to visit. Still clad in court dress, he sits in a pavilion in the gardens, grinning from ear to ear. Your Highness is indeed a sagely tortoise. Your magnanimity knows no bounds. I nearly lose my composure for shame. Chief Yun, this prince have just been suddenly beset by a calamity in the family. My heart has been gravely wounded. I should expect a bit of empathy from you. No harm done. We need only find a couple of comely young men to console your Highness a while, and those grave wounds of yours will be healed by the second half of the night. Yun Yu changes the subject, and asks me, that reminds me, I heard that His Majesty came to call on you in person last evening. He did. I had gone antique viewing with Prince Dai and Chancellor Lu, so I wasn't able to greet him as he arrived. Even now I think of the event with trepidation. Speaking of which, I'm reminded of something I was planning to say to you. Yesterday, His Majesty asked me a few things, and the conversation touched on the relationship between you and I, Chief Yun. Yun Yu raises a brow and says, "Oh," and rests his arm on the railing. His eyes are sparkling, yet his expression hasn't changed. His tone remains as light as before as he asks me, "And what did His Majesty say about my relationship with your Highness?" His Majesty suspects that my relationship with you is also that sort of a relationship. This predilection of mine is known to all. For His Majesty to bring it up, it suggests that others have been taking notice. Now is the time for leaving some things unsaid. I continue, Chief Yun, why don't you steer clear of me for a while? I'm afraid I may do harm to your good name. Without saying anything, Yunyu simply stares at me, and after a moment he breaks into a smile. I don't think there's anything worth avoiding. My reputation is as a major villain's son, a minor villain, not any better than yours. This is the way I am. Who cares what sort of moment it is, I'll do as I like. Unless, your highness is worried that I'd drag you down, and wishes to avoid me. If that's the case, this lowly one won't come by any more. Meeting his gaze, I can do naught but laugh. Chief Yun, your words are always impossible to refute. This prince could never ask you not to visit. Since you are not bothered, we shall carry on as we have before. To my surprise, Yunyu does not continue the conversation as he's wont to do. He simply rises to look at the peonies just outside the pavilion. And soon, he turns his head and stares sidelong at me. His Majesty wasn't wrong. In matters that may be deemed less than chaste, your highness and I do share some. His words jolt me down to the jostled cup of tea in my hand. Chief Yun, this prince have apologized to you 10,000 times, and I will apologize again today. That one time was because I drank too much and mistook you for someone else. I hope you will be so generous as to forgive me. Speaking of which, that truly was my one and only misstep in all my years of flitting from flower to flower. I recall that it began with an invitation to a banquet from Kilai, who said he had something to show everyone. That day, Kitten had come to my estate to get me to lend him money, and so the messenger with the invitation came all the way here. But the invitation was given only to Kitten. It seemed I was the only one left uninvited. I said to Kitten in jest, I wonder what rarity Kilai has managed to get his hands on, that he couldn't bear letting his uncle see, and capitalizing on the status that came with age, I went along with Kitten. Upon our arrival at Kilai's estate, my other nephews as well as those young people often in their company such as Yunyu and Wang Xian were all in attendance. I asked Kilai, what could you not show your uncle? Kilai gave me a look in silence, raised his hands, and clapped. Before long, a number of beautiful blonde and blue-eyed dancers in revealing clothing gracefully came before our seats, and began dancing, swinging their hips with movements vastly different from the dancers of our Sino-Turkic styles, with the shaking of soft breasts, exposing of thighs, slits on the sides of their skirts, and hems rising with every move. My nephews and the other young men were all staring riveted, bewitched beyond measure. I cannot help but lament at how strict the upbringing of these children has been. They have so little experience. Kilai spotted me looking jaded. Imperial Uncle, now you know why this prince didn't invite you, right? Fortunately, Kafei knew how to show filial piety, and he had a servant bring a few pretty page boys to pour for me. Unfortunately, most of them were too young. I'm not so keen on boys that haven't reached maturity. Only one among the pages was slightly older, barely enough to suit my tastes. I sat for a while, holding his hand. The swaying of those foreign dancers was making me dizzy, so I thought it just as well to retire to the garden pavilion and drink in peace, with only the one page to my liking for company. In the sun-warmed afternoon, with a few cups in me, I started to feel sleepy, so I took a small breather in the pavilion. As I slumbered, in a daze I heard a voice close to me calling, "Your Highness, Your Highness." The voice wound its way into my ear, teased me to distraction. I just thought it was the young man keeping me company, and fishing for a sleeve in close proximity, I pulled him flush against me for a kiss. Nearby, a voice exclaimed, "Ayo, oh no, Imperial Uncle's holding the wrong person." Not until I opened my eyes did I realize the graveness of my mistake. The one that had been dragged onto my lap turned out to be Yunyu. However shameless I may have been, my cheeks still burned then. Good thing Yunyu was amenable to such ordeals. He rose to his feet, flipped his hair back into place, and smiled at me. "It seems you've gotten confused in your sleep, Your Highness. Did you mistake this lowly one for some beauty?" I rose and rushed to apologize. "I'm sorry. So sorry. Yun Yu said with a smile, no harm done. It was my fault for coming so close earlier. Qilai stood at the edge of the pavilion, and tapped his palm with a fan. Imperial Uncle, next time you drag someone, don't forget to open your eyes before you start dragging. With a loud mouth like Qilai as a witness, I'm sure those who learned about this story and had a laugh in private numbered not a few. Thinking back, even the way he looked at me seemed a bit odd then. It's likely he was also in the know, and that's why he said what he said yesterday. Slowly and deliberately, Yun Yu says, come to think of it, I should have instead thanked your highness for showing such high regard for me. I cough, raising the teacup to my lips for a drink. Yun Yu stands there staring at the flowers. You're sending Princess Consort Huai to a Buddhist nunnery for some quiet reflection, but what about Hezhong? He's suffered an injustice, and should be amply compensated. I've asked Qilai to arrange for a post at a classics academy of some sort, and I'll send him there once he's recovered from his injuries. Now's the moment to avail myself of the opportunity to add some good deeds and benevolence to this prince's name. It will be beneficial for the future. Yun Yu turns back to me. Your Highness's conduct is becoming increasingly like someone who is already sitting on that topmost seat. My hand pauses mid-air, and I set down my cup. He continues, there's no cause for worry, Your Highness. No one else is here. Chief Yun, some words are inappropriate, and should be left unsaid. Yun Yu gives me a smile. Certainly, Your Highness. But don't you think there must be something behind this whole thing with Princess Consort Huai? She's made the matter public, as though she meant to undermine your reputation at the cost of her life. It may even be because someone's given her guidance. As for Hezhong, I know. Either way, I'll deal with the ever-changing situation with a constant adherence to my core principles. It's getting late. Well then, this one should be on my way. Yun Yu starts to go, then pauses as he passes by me and lowers his voice to say, evening after next, Moonlight Pavilion. Your Highness, please do not hesitate to come due to misgivings over your reputation. My father and Lord Wang tasked me to pass on that message. Also, you should keep some distance from Lu Tongyi. This one know that your Highness would not approach him without a plan, but this one find him quite difficult to contend with, and likely to pose a hindrance to you. Yes, this prince no. This prince will be more careful. Thereupon Yun Yu leaves. I sit watching his receding silhouette until it disappears at a turn in the path. Yun Yu, early success, high position, power in hand. Like a peony in full flower, he's practically peerless. All he possesses at his age is already rare for anyone to have. What could be plaguing him so, for him to decide to conspire in a rebellion with his father? End chapter.